All right, so we are back. I'm finally back home, and this week's been crazy for me. I was in Nashville working a show as a favor to my coach, trainer, and brother BJ Flores. I was in Canada doing Most Valuable Prospects number 11. What a show that was. The outlook of it. Toronto, y'all came through. And then yesterday, I was doing something that I can't quite elaborate on just yet. But let's just say I was in Las Vegas for UFC 313. More news coming on that very, very soon. Hopefully. I'll tell you guys when I can, if I can. I'll just put it that way. I know that's not what you want to hear, and that's the weird, like, blue balls thing for someone to do, but trust me, it'll be worth the wait. But while I was there in Vegas for UFC 313, I got to see a banger of a card. From the top to the bottom, and yes, we had some fights fall out, but for the most part, this was a fantastic card. You had Santos Diaz in one of the better fights I've seen this year as the opening fight of the night. I saw one of the rounds where they combined for over 100 significant strikes between the two of them. You had Mauricio Rufy throwing wheel kicks that I'd lose a leg if I probably tried to do. And then you had Ignacio Bahamondes triangle choke extraordinaire, apparently out of nowhere. Striker turns grappler. His work with Bilal Muhammad is clearly paying off for him. And then the co-main event, Justin Gaethje and Rafael Fiziev. That fight right there, I could watch for the rest of my life. 6 rounds of absolute carnage between two high-level warriors. And I don't use that word often, but when you have two fighters willing to go get it like that. Fiziev coming off essentially a 12-day notice. Justin Gaethje planning for Dan Hooker, finding out he has to fight Fiziev again, banging the uppercut in the second round and winning that fight. Once again, so many options for both guys as they continue to move forward in their career. But today, I'm here to talk about the main event. Yes, Alex Pereira and Magomed Ankalaev. Controversy abound over who people thought won this fight. People saying that the wrong guy won, that the UFC's dead, they have no stars left, and controversies about what happens next for the UFC. Now, I specifically want to talk about the fight, but we will get into what happens next for both guys because I think, hot take potentially, Ankalaev won this fight, and not because of the reasons that are being thrown around online and the accusations being thrown around about hugging against the fence and ruining the sport and all the things that are going on Hot Take Twitter on a Sunday/Monday when you see this. But the real reason I thought Magomed Ankalaev won this fight is because he outstruck one of the greatest strikers in the UFC. What do I mean? The breakdown. Let's go. All right, so Pereira, Ankalaev. Let's first off talk about the stakes at play here, right? Potentially, Alex Pereira, even at the point where he was starting this fight, 12-2, looking to become, even with such a short amount of time in the UFC, one of the greatest of all time. Yes, a champion at middleweight, now a champion at light heavyweight. Conversations being had about Alex Pereira potentially with a win here, looking back at the division and going, well, there's nothing really left for me here. Maybe I look up at heavyweight and see a John Jones or a Tom Aspinall and try to go for that third belt. That was kind of the talk here. I mean, you heard Bruce Buffer introduce Alex Pereira as the one, the only. He's only done that for 2 more UFC fighters, and that's John Jones and Conor McGregor. Clearly the UFC's biggest star right now. And with all that on the table, there's a lot of opportunity with the win here. On the other side of it, we have Magomed Ankalaev, who has had a long road back to the belt. Obviously a disappointing draw for then the vacant light heavyweight belt in 2022 versus Jan Blachowicz. And that took a toll, obviously, on him mentally. He talked about it for years, how that fight he thought he won. And then having the double rematch with Johnny Walker just to put him away. The great win over Alexander Rakic to finally get back to this moment. It felt like there was a lot of obstacles in his way, metaphorically and physically, for him to get to this title. But to beat Alex Pereira and get this light heavyweight belt would be the best full circle moment for a guy like Magomed Ankalaev, because how long it took him to get back to the belt, how maybe he needed to improve after that 2022 fight versus Jan Blachowicz to get back here and have this opportunity and be able to capitalize like I think he did. Round 1 begins and is what we've come to know well from Alex Pereira to start the fight. He starts off on the front foot. He utilizes the low leg kicks, and he's pushing Ankalaev back. Now, from what we have seen from Alex Pereira in the octagon, this would be what we call normal, but at the same time, this would be the beginning of normal. This is how he would start fights, and fighters like Jamal Hill, fighters like Sean Strickland, fighters like Khalil Roundtree, hell, fighters like even Israel Adesanya would give him that space to operate, and thus he takes over dictation of the pace of the fight. He's on the front foot. He is the one kicking the low calf. He's the one shutting your offense down, attacking that lead leg. Now, Ankalaev is southpaw, so he doesn't get the whip on the calf kick like he would if he was fighting an orthodox fighter. He can go to his back leg. He has to kick it off the lead leg, but he did somewhat similar things to Khalil Roundtree, and we'll get back to that comparison in just a second here. But the first round was a lot of Alex Pereira doing what he does. Ankalaev was either very patient or just couldn't get going because of that pressure and of that kind of pace that Pereira sets in the first round. It wasn't a ton of overwhelming pressure. It was just guiding, it felt like, from Pereira. Just, again, easing his way into getting his offense started with the low calf kick, with the lead hand. I thought this was a pretty easy round to score for Alex Pereira. The controversy will come in a little bit, but I thought this was an easy round for the champion. Round 2, Ankalaev comes out and flips the script. He takes center of the octagon, and I think it was so important to establish control of the attacking pressure for Magomed Ankalaev because, again, you talk about what Alex does well. Yes, he can fight off his back foot. There's no doubt about it. He can plant his feet and throw his hands. He can hit you with a knee coming in. He can kick you with that lead low kick and get you to, again, slow down coming forward so he can take back over pressure. But that wasn't the case here. While, yes, Alex landed a ton of low leg kicks, the effect they had on Magomed Ankalaev was almost nowhere to be found. Like, you didn't see any indication that his lead leg was compromised in any way. You didn't see him fight any differently because of it. Hell, you didn't even see him stop moving forward from the start of the second round pretty much through the rest of the fight. So like I said, Magomed Ankalaev takes the front foot. He starts to really back Alex up with more so just feints. And you saw him out of that southpaw stance level changing and wheeling that lead hand. I like to call it a wheel or a churn. You see a lot of the Soviet-style boxers do it over, in the squared circle. You see guys from the Ukraine like Alexander Usyk, who, funny enough, Pereira was calling for a fight against after this fight. Don't think that's going to happen anytime soon, but you see them, just giving you different looks with that lead hand, especially with an orthodox southpaw matchup. You're going to get Ankalaev swiping away at that lead hand, trying to find his way around it because Pereira does hold his hand so low. It's almost a deflecting kind of stay out of my space deterrent with his lead, but Ankalaev gets past it and he starts going to the body of Alex Pereira with the teep kick. And I thought that was a big-time weapon for him in this fight, to push Alex back, right? To shove him past the point of that black kind of line that outlines the octagon and put him on the fence. And also, you started to see him go with the straight backhand. Not upstairs yet, but he was tagging Alex to the body with it. And again, just forcing Alex to be more defensive, forcing him to shrink what he does well and not get that momentum started and not be able to put those combinations together that are so deadly. And I talked about a second ago comparing Khalil Roundtree to Ankalaev, and only really specifically because they're southpaw. But if we wanted to expand on it, why was Khalil successful, or when, I should say, was Khalil successful against Alex Pereira? It was either when Khalil went first, as in he initiated the attack and made Alex answer him with something, or when Alex tried to commit but didn't fully and instead put himself in a bad position squared up. The same things happened in this fight. You're starting to see this comfortability with Alex while he is in danger, where, outside of Israel Adesanya, no one's really made him pay for sometimes a lack of commitment when he's in a firefight or being too close with his hands down squared up, like he kind of was when he backed Israel Adesanya up on the fence and he got tagged with a right hand for it in their second fight in the UFC. Or when he stood in front of Khalil Roundtree and threw the question mark kick but overcommitted to it and landed flat on his feet. And Khalil caught him with a nice check right hook. Here in this fight, the big difference, in my opinion, from, a Khalil Roundtree who's a fantastic striker, but not anywhere close to the size and frame of Alex Pereira, which he does have that build on everybody. He's 6'3", 6'4", with a 79-inch reach. It's going to be hard to match that from anybody, really, in the heavyweight division. John Jones is the only guy that's going to give him a size and reach matchup that's detrimental to Poatan. But Magomed was not as short, was not as small, did not have as much of a reach discrepancy to make up. So those things allowed him, when Alex overcommitted with his body but didn't fully commit with his attack, or when he stood squared up in front of Magomed, he was going to get tagged for it. And you saw it at the end of this second round when Magomed, unlike a lot of the fighters that Alex Pereira has fought recently, just accepted the back foot position. He pushed Alex backward, and Alex had to fire off that back foot, or he had to commit to shots, again, against a southpaw that were going to leave him vulnerable while his hands were low and he had less space to operate. Magomed tags him with a nasty overhand left and wobbles the legs of the champion. This was the most significant strike of the fight with about 10 seconds on the clock, and he looks to follow up. Alex does do a good job of trying to clinch here, but he was on wobbly legs. I think if that thing goes 10 to 15 more seconds and 1 or 2 clean more shots from Magomed Ankalaev, the fight could have been stopped there. And yes, that's woulda, shoulda, coulda, so we don't score fights that way. It has nothing to do with what happens in the next round, because yes, MMA and any other combat sports that do have rounds are scored by round. This one was a big round to what the kids are saying on Twitter, Big Unk, as Ankalaev came back and turned the tide of this fight. Not just won the round, but changed the trajectory of how this fight would go from here on. Round 3 is the most controversial round in everyone's opinion of the fight. And when I look back at the round, and I just now rewatched it just because I wanted to make sure that I looked at round 3 as the pivotal swing round. A lot of people online saying Ankalaev gets 2 and 4, Alex gets 1 and 5. But round 3 is the toss-up round. And I do agree with that statement. I don't think this was 4-1 Ankalaev. Don't think in some crazy world some people had it 4-1 Pereira. But I think this was a 3-2 fight either way. And that's another big point that I want to stress when doing these videos is this was a close fight. This is not some blowout. This is not some, fraud check. He's washed. Pereira can never come back and win. No, this was a close fight. And on any given night, this is probably going to be a toss-up fight. Flip the coin and see who wins, because both guys' styles are a detriment to the other, where Alex Pereira is such a great striker that Ankalaev can't necessarily commit to being either a volume striker or he can't really commit to the wrestling game either, because if you don't take Alex down, which by the way, Ankalaev didn't this entire fight, very stressful on your gas tank, and puts you in positions where Alex can sweep you like he did in this fight, or get his hips out before you get him to the cage and throw big time counter strikes as you're resetting the action. And on that same note, but on a different side of the coin, Ankalaev's pressure and the threat of the takedown and how good his striking is. Not saying it's Islam Makhachev level, but Islam did on his rise present this same problem to guys where you thought guys like Charles Oliveira had better striking than Islam Makhachev. Justin Gaethje, probably a better boxer striker than Islam Makhachev. Dustin Poirier, best boxer one of in the UFC, got to be a better striker than Islam, and he stands on the feet and outstrikes a lot of those guys. And it was because of the total package he presents as an MMA fighter. Anyway, we get to round 3, and this is the round where, again, a lot of people have their swing vote. You think Alex won the fight? You thought he won the 3rd round. You think Ankalaev won the fight? You thought he won the 3rd round. I went back and watched, and not only was this a close fight, this was a close 3rd round. I counted around 20 to 21 significant strikes for both guys in this round. I know the ESPN stats said differently and the UFC stats said differently. I watched this and I almost went frame by frame. And yes, there are some strikes that land glancing off shoulders and glancing off, clavicle from both guys that I kind of went, okay, if you want to count that, sure. But I don't know that that's a clean punch by the measure of, what we're talking about and the technicalities of it. But I tried to count what I thought was a significant strike by meaning a punch, kick, anything that landed flush. And I don't mean landed flush as in someone got their neck snapped and they're wobbling around. No, that landed clean, that wasn't like a little flicker of the toe, or that wasn't a punch that happened to caught the end of the glove as it went by. No, this was a shot that landed with intention somewhere on the legs, body, or head region. I counted this, honestly, it was dead even. Maybe give or take 1 or 2 strikes to either fighter. And when things are that even, and I thought that the most damaging shot of the round, while yes, Alex Pereira was very, very isolated with his attacks, they were mostly low leg kick after low leg kick. And yes, they do count. Those are effective strikes. They count. They may not have affected Magomed Ankalaev with his forward pressure. They may not have really done anything to the lead leg to compromise him and allow Alex to get back to his lead foot and controlling the pace of the fight, but they still landed, and they landed clean. Ankalaev did most of his work to the head and body. Yes, he was still coming back with some leg kicks, some teeps to the knee, some teeps and some push kicks to the body. And then upstairs, I thought the biggest shot of the round was a jab. And it kind of, I wouldn't say hurt Alex Pereira, rocked him, but it definitely did get his attention, and he kind of had to reset again while his back was on the fence. This was, in my opinion, the reason I give Ankalaev the 3rd round, because he had such control of where the fight took place. He was the one that kept himself in close proximity looking to attack forward. I've always been one of the guys that fought back against people that just threw out the terms octagon control or ring generalship as some sort of defining scoring metric without any other context behind it or any other attacks behind it, right? If you were just standing in front of someone and not attacking, that isn't effective to me. You are just standing there and being hit or countered, or, the fight is just taking place on a person's back foot versus a front. But if you're not attacking, then it means nothing. In this case, I saw Ankalaev pushing Alex Pereira back with a purpose. I saw him attacking to push Alex Pereira back. I saw him utilizing that pressure and that pace and the positioning of where the fight was taking place to cut off Alex Pereira, right? To make him square because the fence is right behind him and not allow him to move as much laterally so that he can try to get off those effective strikes. Again, he does have a reach disadvantage. So the more distance he pushes Alex Pereira back, the less distance Alex Pereira can move back, because there is a cage at a certain point, and that does eliminate a lot of that reach discrepancy when Alex can't just frame and slide away. I thought Ankalaev win the third round. Comment section, you can let me know how crazy I am down below, but I just genuinely think he does win this round. He doesn't win it going away, and sure, if you have an argument for Alex that maybe I'm not seeing, then you can comment that below. And I wouldn't like tear up my setup and call for a robbery or some sort of corruption of the sport if you said Alex won the round. I just don't see how he could have if strikes were even. Biggest power strikes of the round go to Ankalaev, as well as controlling the pace of the round. So rounds 4 and 5. These two rounds are your championship rounds, obviously, in MMA, and this is the portion of the fight where people are kind of clinging to if their criticism of Magomed Ankalaev and talking about how he hugged Alex Pereira for the entirety of these last two rounds. Well, let's start with round 4. Round 4 showed me a couple of things. One, that yes, there are some things that MMA fans do get tired of, and those are specifically sequences on the fence where fighters aren't necessarily looking to separate and throw big-time punches or knees or, get into a swing fest. I can understand that sentiment. There are times where we see fighters like Marab, for example, who sometimes will get you to the cage, fail the takedown on purpose, essentially, just to drive you into the cage and hold you there and, not look to necessarily attack and find ways to damage you. I didn't see that, at least in the 4th round, with Magomed Ankalaev. Yes, he was looking to grapple more exclusively in these rounds to start his attacks. Now, was he successful in taking Alex Pereira down? No, not at all. And there should have been more credit here given to Alex Pereira for his takedown defense. I don't know in which way you credit that. Boxing, defense is credited by not being hit and catch countering and parrying shots, things like that. I don't really know what the scoring criteria looks like for a guy that does stuff 12 takedowns or whatever it was, 11 takedowns straight. Like, Ankalaev didn't land one takedown. Now, you can ask the question, did Ankalaev put the effort in to land a takedown, or was it mainly grappling to get Alex to the cage so that he could work inside of the clinch to throw the knees to the body, the knees to the leg, the shots upstairs, the left hand to the body, left hand upstairs? He was very effective with that in the 4th round, and I think it was pretty clear to everyone that 4th round does go to him. Yes, with the control time, which is, again, sometimes I can agree, not the most entertaining thing to watch. I understand that, but it is part of the sport, and I hate being this guy, but if you're going to complain about someone being held against the cage, it is the impetus on the person being held against the cage to not get held against the cage, right? That is the counter to all of this stuff. And even Alex, who came out and said, they awarded him a win for holding me against the cage. Alex does have a moment in this 4th round, a couple moments where he slips out and then resets, but it's a give and take sport. If you are going to be frustrated with guys doing it, find ways to stop them from doing it. And if you don't want grappling involved at all, there is kickboxing out there, there is boxing out there, there's even bare knuckle out there for you. But this is part of the sport, and yes, maybe we should look at ways to keep action more smoothly flowing so guys aren't resting in holds here or on the cage. Either way, but the simplest answer is, if you don't like someone holding you against the cage, it is your job to then get off of the cage and stop them from holding you there. Easier said than done. I'm a commentator, not a fighter. I get all that. I am just saying that is the simplest argument against it. Regardless, I thought it was more than just Ankalaev holding Alex against the cage. Were they the most devastating strikes he threw the fight in this round? No, but he did land effective striking. He did have a purpose behind pushing Alex to the cage, and the grappling did set up the striking and vice versa. It was a nice switch in technique, I thought, versus just getting into a kickboxing match with one of the greatest kickboxers / transition to MMA strikers that's ever lived. Like, obviously, if you have the tools to not have to engage with him for 25 minutes straight, and you can give yourself a little bit of relief and put yourself in a position that he's having to be defensive in, like 100% defensive, where Alex can't attack, and of course you're going to take advantage of that. Round 5, I thought Alex had a great comeback round, as a champion should. Befitting a champ, he was more active in this round. It did feel like, again, throughout the first 4 rounds, Alex just could not get his timing. He was very hesitant, was on the back foot a lot. So this 5th round, it was crucial for him to come out and try to find a knockout. Again, he tried to do that. You saw more high kicks in this round, more aggressive with his strikes, even off the back foot. He was landing, I would say, far more power, clean shots in this round than he had in any of the previous 4. So this was a really good round for Alex Pereira, not just, with the low attacks, but upstairs, everything else. And yes, he did have to deal with Magomed changing the trajectory of the fight by grappling him. In this round, I would say Magomed did hold him against the cage a little more here. Definitely some time wasting there. Let's shut this guy down before he gets going in this 5th round and completely turns the tide. And again, you don't have to like that style of fighting. And it for sure was not something that Magomed did the entirety of the fight. So again, the accusations out there that he just hugged Alex for 25 minutes and that's how he won is just not true. But if that's something you don't like, yes, I get it. But you do have to look at the champion and say, you can't allow yourself to be put in these positions to where you're behind that black line, you're squared up, and off of an attack, whether it's Magomed throwing his backhand and then looking to grapple or level change, jab, whatever, kick, then he gets the hands on Alex and pushes him to the cage. You have to blame a little bit of that on Alex Pereira for putting himself in a position where he is so hesitant, where he has found himself moving backwards exclusively almost the entirety of the fight. You look at some of where these takedowns are initiated, Alex is a foot, maybe a foot and a half away from the fence. It's not like Ankalaev is shooting on him in the middle of the octagon there. And if he had shot on Alex in the middle of the octagon, Alex would have had far more success defending those takedowns. The fence is the crutch for bad wrestling or ineffective wrestling, right? That whole point is, I don't have to take you down. I can just shove you into the cage, hold you here, and get some offense off. And strikers can do virtually nothing about it outside of getting an underhook, pummeling, and trying to circle back to the center of the octagon where they're more effective at striking and defending the takedown. So again, I thought Alex won the 5th round. But you want to talk about, oh, what a boring fight. Like, he wouldn't let Alex fight. He wanted to hug him. No, if you look at this fight again, and I encourage you guys, it's free right now on ESPN Plus because of all the issues they had with the pay-per-view last night. Go and watch this fight and look at what really happened during the fight. Not just the 3 or 4 minutes where Ankalaev holds Alex on the cage. But why was Alex so close to the cage? Why was Alex so hesitant with his striking? Why was Alex not the same fighter we had seen versus fellow striker Khalil Roundtree or fellow just striker Israel Adesanya or exclusively striker Israel Adesanya? Yes, Magomed Ankalaev's wrestling ability made Alex hesitant, but his striking pushed Alex back. His striking put him in bad positions. His striking interrupted Alex Pereira's pace, his combinations, and changed the trajectory of this fight. It wasn't Magomed Ankalaev as a wrestler first in this fight that won him the fight. It was him going toe-to-toe with one of the best strikers in the UFC and, quite frankly, in the world, that allowed him to not only gain the respect of that striker in the striking department, but then utilize his whole game in a full package performance. So at the end of the 5th round, we have the decision, and I think one judge had it 49-46 Ankalaev. I did not agree with that, but 48-47s from the other two in a unanimous decision to Magomed Ankalaev. He is your new light heavyweight champion of the world. And you looked on Twitter, the entire company was ruined. The sport is dead and the world's about to end. And listen, it's hard not to be just honest about it and say right now the UFC does have a star power issue, right? There is no Conor McGregor. There is no Israel Adesanya. There is no Anderson Silva. John Jones is still around, but not fighting as much. Brock Lesnar, Ronda Rousey, those people don't exist in the sport right now. And it is very much because the sport has changed. This is a UFC-driven sport, not a fighter name-driven sport. It's not necessarily pay-per-views that drive. It is the company, the brand behind it. So as of right now, Alex Pereira is a big, big star. And him losing is probably not something that Dana or anybody in the higher-ups wanted to happen, but this is a sport at the end of the day, and the best will prevail. No one can protect your star in this game. This isn't professional wrestling. You have to go and earn it every single time. And yes, when you do that, you create fan bases, etc. Does Magomed or Bilal or Merab or Islam winning ruin the sport? I don't think so. I think, yes, a hit to the star power of your highest star right now. But how else are you supposed to create new stars? Is Magomed Ankalaev going to be a star? I don't know. But how else are you supposed to create them? When Chuck Liddell got beat by Rashad Evans, did that kill the UFC? No. When Matt Serra went out and destroyed George St. Pierre in a minute and a half to 2 minutes, did that kill the UFC? No. Obviously, yes, you want a champion people want to see, but we haven't even given Ankalaev that chance to see if he can garner that fan base. And the UFC is a global sport. Your biggest star right now, and Alex Pereira, doesn't even speak much English. So Yes, he has some personality, but I say give it some time before we start doom and glooming the sport just because Ankalaev wrestled for a little bit of the last 2 rounds in a championship fight. Like, I think we're doom and glooming a little too early here. And all in all, the people that are saying these kind of things online, it's like you forgot about the co-main event. It's like you forgot about the wheel kick. It's like you forgot about Ignacio Bahamondes' triangle choke and all these things that were major highlights of this card. And yes, it's the main event, so it's going to be talked about the most, but I feel like sometimes we put the cart before the horse on what the potential of everything going forward is on the hot take Saturday night, Sunday, and Mondays like we're going to have. But I'll end off by saying this. I think Magomed Ankalaev is due his flowers for winning this fight. I thought it was a great game plan. I thought he executed well. I thought he struck with one of the greatest strikers, and because of that, I think the major reason he won this fight is because he was able to strike and outstrike Alex Pereira for 3 of those 5 rounds. It's a big deal. Now, was this fight some walk away? Wow, look how much more dominant Ankalaev was? No, it was a close fight. And I say that because I would like to see a rematch immediately because Alex was such a great champion and, you know, the title defenses were there. I think he was going for his 4th at light heavyweight. But having those title defenses, having his reign at 85 and 205, this fight being as close as it was, I think it's far and away easy enough to say this is clearly rematch worthy. They should do it as soon as both fighters are healthy. I know Alex had the 5-fight run where he didn't take any breaks, so hopefully now we can get a break for Alex, at least somewhat, so he can rejuvenate the body, come back. Ankalaev as well, and we get another banger in the second part of this fight. The rematch, I think, even builds it further, and who knows who wins that one still. Pereira, if he comes back and wins, your biggest star. Ankalaev come back and win again in more spectacular fashion. You could be looking at a story like you saw with Islam Makhachev and Alexander Volkanovski, where in the first fight, people were like, nah, Volk should have won. Volk should have won. This guy, Islam, he didn't even grapple him good, and this guy, Islam, couldn't even grapple, couldn't even take him down, da-da-da. And the second time around, Islam kicks him in the head, knocks him out, and all of a sudden, Islam's got a major fan base. Everyone's riding with Islam, and he becomes #1 pound-for-pound fighter in the world, and you guys love it. Give it time. Let's see this thing play out. But yes, in my opinion, the right man won. I don't think that's a hot take, but you guys let me know down below. And as far as Magomed Ankalaev, your new champ at 205, and Alex Pereira, and the rest of the card at UFC 213 that I got to see in person, I'll tell you why later this week. I don't have those answers as to what happens next, but I guess we'll find out.